So we have Kenneth and Carl. Kenneth.
Thanks very much.
Yep.
You'd given a copy to me.
Yeah, no, I've raised a code of conduct about that. That was just atrocious. It's just so loud.
Hello, Kylie. How are you? So we have got
Well, we'll hold them to it from here
both presenting. Go ahead.
Yep.
on. At the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll just quickly recap some of the
End up for questions.
key points in the summary, and then open up for questions and comments. So as you will all be aware, we had quite a comprehensive conversation at the workshop that was held on the 15th of November about the broader communications and engagement approach. The 10-year budget and the Auckland Plan both require the use of the Special Consultative Procedure under the Local Government Act 2002, and in 2014 there was an amendment to the Local Government Act to allow more flexibility in terms of how we engage our communities to ensure that aligned with their preferences and suited their needs. As a result, the 10-year budget Auckland Plan consultation approach has factored that into our process, with the consultation period next year running from 28th of February through to the 28th of March. It's also been made clear in the paper that there is no time for traditional hearings after the consultation period, and we've recommended a range of different methods that we have tried and would also look to implement to engage our communities, which include 25 Have Your Say events across the region, 4 regional stakeholder events, Hui Mana Whenua and Matawaka, and 4 to 6 community events with specific demographic groups and ethnic communities, as well as an independently commissioned quantitative survey of Auckland residents.
Kenneth, can we just a little bit more clear on the regional stakeholder events?
Sure. So the regional stakeholder events that we're proposing will be based on the topics that are confirmed, and will include a list of regional stakeholders who are invited to an event that will be run centrally, plus specific stakeholder events that focus on transport and infrastructure. And we've also penciled in time to also have a session on central government relationships, which we're still confirming.
Councillors, we have a list, an existing list from the last annual plan, which is built on. We will circulate that list. We're going to group it into, for example, those groups that are arts groups or whatever. We will group it like that, and we'll pass it on to the councillors, and then obviously suggestions for valid groups will be considered, and also we will just see what actually comes through in the actual consultation as well. So
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
we're starting with Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I ask the question, can I get clarification from you as to how the process will be for this item? If there are going to be any amendments, should they be tabled now for discussion, concurrent to questions, or are you going to deal with questions and then we're going to have debate?
It's actually been brought to my attention there is an amendment, so we're going to consider the amendment, and it's moving the amendment
the last
by
item too.
Councillor Newman and Councillor Cooper, I think it's, sorry, Sayers. So
What am I doing? I'm not
amendment here? Yep.
Oh, I hadn't agreed to second that, but anyway, look, so questions. Questions.
You're first on the list, and your question.
Okay.
Councillor Newman.
So my question with respect to this item, can you confirm that concurrent to the consultation on the 10-year plan, which is what this addresses, that the concurrent consultation will address the regional pest management plan, the draft regional land transport strategy, and the waste management and minimisation plan? Are those part of this consultation as well?
Yes, to the extent that we are engaging with the general public, correct. There are separate stakeholder engagement processes being run for those for the management of pest and the waste consultation plans.
The public own cats, so they'll be interested. Where in this report does it codify that the consultation addresses 4 activities, the budget, transport, pests and waste? Because this only addresses the budget. Where are the other 3? they're not there, are they?
No, I don't think that they are there.
Why aren't they there?
Because it's separate.
They are separate.
But this process that we're discussing, which is a process about how we will consult, doesn't address that point.
So this report just focuses on the 10-year budget and the Auckland Plan refresh. WMMP and the pest management will have separate targeted events, and they may have hearings on their plans.
I see. And when will we get advice on that?
I believe they go through different committees than Finance and Performance.
Go through the individual
Okay.
committee,
Yep.
I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Sorry, I think you've almost answered my question, thank you. It was around the list of regional stakeholders, because if we are voting on having 4 regional stakeholder events, it would have been nice to have identified what they were in the process for adding to that or whatever as part of the report, and it wasn't there. So that was my question. And my second question, as a result of the amendment, if that's appropriate to ask that now, is that if this paper talks about, to maybe the move in the seconder, this paper talks about the fact that they're asking councillors, if option 1 went ahead, they're asking councillors to go to at least 3, have your say, events in the region by way of hearing those regional views. Are the councillors saying that having 3 people at the have your say is not enough?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that really what your purpose to the amendment? You're saying you've got to have 20, and what happens if all 20 don't turn up and you only end up by having 3 anyway?
I suppose we just need to wait until they speak to their amendment. and
Okay,
we can
sorry.
answer those
Right.
questions there. So,
Okay, you could answer that question when you ask, thank you.
I'm going to take Councillor Walker first, and then Councillor Sayers and Darby.
I'm seeking your generosity, Mr Chair, and it goes to...
I haven't got my...
Always to you, Wayne.
Of course, and it goes to an earlier conversation I had with you, and also to Kenneth, and it's around broadening what I see in the options around the stakeholder events and also the community-specific events to include engagement with particular clusters, and I'm referring to business, environment, the arts and social, and looking to those particular sectors to organise that participation and engagement and promotion. And in my view, that will generate significantly more participation. Those groups know where the interest lies. They will be able to identify the locations and the times that suit, and I would suggest that there may also be a saving to council around that. And I would also add that I know in some instances some of those groups are interested in having that engagement on Marae, which I'm sure would meet with approval from the Independent Murray Statutory Board.
So your question is to Kenneth? Yep.
So my question is, can we make that possible? And do we need to alter this wording a little bit with the generosity of the Chair to make that so?
Through the Chair, the items and the recommendations are what we're committed to and focused to resourcing, but I definitely want to explore what the option that you're putting forward in regards to working with specific stakeholder groups, in principle to deliver events that they can partner through their networks. So yes, my concern would only be the resources and capacity required to support any additional events over this, but I'm happy to explore the option with you after the meeting.
It may be more economical, it may generate more participation, in which case, why not?
The issue is that the danger, Councillor Walker, is that there could be capture by 1 or 2 all-powerful as compared to those least powerful within a sector, so we have to think about that. Kenneth, the 4 regional stakeholder events, my understanding is if we basically needed to have more because we ended up with too much, or just we could stretch that to extra days. Are we locked into 4 if we need 5 or 6?
The democracy calendar is completely full at the moment. What we could do though is instead of having 21 round the table is split into 2 and have half here and half down at the council chambers so we could get through double the amount.
That's a good idea.
Through you, Mr Chair.
Yep.
My concern is that the present system is already captured and it's very narrow. I'm suggesting a situation where it's much more open and the engagement is much more open. That is my concern, Mr Chair.
Councillor Sayers, are you going to speak, got questions generally, or do you want to speak to your amendment?
Questions?
How about questions?
Yeah,
Keep going
yeah,
with
yeah,
questions.
thank you.
Yep.
And in that question, I'll try and cover Councillor Simpson's point there, because my question just goes around, we've got those 2 options, option 1 and option 2, and thank you for outlining that option 1. My question's more trying to flesh out around those options 2, because the purpose of the amendment up there is, rather than having all those regional hearings, is perhaps bring it into a streamlined, consolidated one here in front of us. So could you just, my question is, could you just elaborate a little bit further on what Councillor Sim was alluding to in terms of those, what option 2 covers in terms of additional to the have your say events and the other events? What's additional in there that's proposed at the moment, please?
So in addition to what is proposed at the moment, through the chair, is traditional hearings that will be held out at a sub-regional level, north, south, west, east, central. That being the case to allow for the principle of being convenient for local people to attend those additional events over on top of the Have Your Say events that will already be organised. And because it will allow a more transport user-friendly way for them to get to those meetings.
That's option 1.
It's option 2.
Option 2. So option 2.
All regional stakeholder events, though. Or is it an option?
Sorry, I'm talking about the general. So option 2, in terms of what we're offering the general public, would be traditional hearings that will be held at a sub-regional level. That's over and above the regional stakeholder events that will be had for regional stakeholders and the Have Your Say events that have been planned across the region as well.
Just a bit, you also mentioned there about the local boards. Did you want to elaborate a little bit further on that as well, please?
Yes, so the local boards provide a lot of insight and experience in regards to how they have engaged their communities in the past, plus have strong relationships with community groups that we would want to participate. They would therefore be an important group for us to work with to ensure the success of those events. And we are liaising with them to develop and design what we think will be the most successful format for events that are held in those parts of Auckland.
So just a clarification question, if I may, Mr Chair.
Yep.
With option 1, would that process with the local boards still be occurring or not? Could you just clarify that for me? I'm just a little confused.
Through the chair, yes, that would still happen as well. We are, for both options, looking at involving the local boards in the process of delivering these events.
Thank you very much. Very clear.
Councillor Darby.
Thank you, Chair. Question, Kenneth, thank you for your work. Just in response to the matter I raised at the workshop, Kenneth, about focus groups, what did you uncover there, and any approximate costings and the benefits of using such a resource?
So, thank you for the question through the chair. So focus groups as an approach provide us with an opportunity to really target the groups, I think, that don't normally participate and ensure that they're part of the conversation. So we have looked at the option of conducting focus groups that look at the demographic groups such as youth, ethnic, Pacific, to ensure that they participated. Costs for approximately 15 focus groups to cover those particular demographic groups would be in the range of 75 to 100k, and we're just weighing up whether we feel that would elicit the kind of feedback that we want over and above what we're already committed to delivering.
And apologies if I've misread the report. I was probably looking for a different language. So that's what you're alluding to under the 4th bullet point of the recommendations, are you? Within that, there is an assumption that there are focus groups for the 4th bullet point.
Oh, yes, I see that. Well, that's something that we're discussing with the advisory panels as well to see what they think is best for the groups that they represent. But we would say that my recommendation is that would be the part of our population that we'd want to target with focus groups.
Okay, so it's still a work in progress. It's not landed as yet.
It hasn't landed as yet.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, we had this discussion last year, if you remember, members. This year, the coming year, we're going to be dealing with the long-term plan, and though I haven't seen it costed yet, it's going to be up around $70 to $80 billion. It's a huge amount of money, and obviously there's a lot to be done with that money, and our legal responsibility to the people who'll be providing that money, the ratepayers of Auckland, is the special consultative procedure. Now, I urge members that we support the most inclusive arrangements possible as we present this long-term plan, which will be so significant and historic for Auckland. In the past, the council, in recent years, the council has elected to go for these have your say events, but in my experience, they seem to be contrived. Quite often, at the many ones I've been to, there are more council staff than there are members of the public, and I believe they do not fit the legal special consultative procedure, and therefore I would urge that if people want to make a submission to the governing body or to a committee of the governing body, which is asking them for their rates for the next 10 years, that they be allowed to do so, that we shouldn't be discriminating on what we think self-picked stakeholders, some more important than others. Aucklanders may from time to time identify with their profession, with their race, with their religion, with their sports code, with their sports team, with their suburb. But to us, they are all citizens of Auckland, and we should treat them equally. If members of the public, citizens or ratepayers want to address the governing body in a formal way, they should not be excluded from doing so. So I am happy to support the amendment by Councillor Sayers and Councillor Newman. It's one that we discussed last year for the annual plan. I think for the long-term plan and the legal requirements of the special consultative procedure, despite being weakened or changed to allow for people's personal preferences, ironically, if the preferences of a citizen of Auckland is to attend and present to a formal hearing, then we need to respect that. That may be a matter of generosity along your lines, Mr. Chairman, or it may be a legal obligation. I think it is the latter, and therefore I strongly support the amendment. Thank you.
We weren't on to the amendment yet, but I'll take that.
Well, it's up on the...
Yeah, but
Mine was.
so
too,
there is
but
a
it was
question
not
out of
back.
that, and the question that Councillor Lee is asking is how legal is our consultative process this year?
It's absolutely within legislation.
Thank you. So there's nothing tricky going on, that's all. So are there any further questions to the overall theme of things before we get to the amendment? Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously the legislation was changed in 2014 to increase engagement.
That's right.
Do you want to maybe just talk briefly about the change? We've been doing it for 3 years. What is the change that has been seen from the old way to the new way of engagement?
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question. So if you, as an example, if you look at the attachment which looks at a comparison of numbers in regards to,
Page 27.
yes, have your say events versus traditional hearings, you'll see there's been an increase in numbers of attendees to have your say events compared to those who have attended hearings. And we're seeing a growth in that space, and that's something we want to continue if we want to see more public participation. Thank you.
And how about the submissions? They've almost
The submissions have either doubled or quadrupled since 2013, and we're really proud of that. We want to continue that trend.
Thank you.
Supplementary to that, do you have an area breakdown on those?
Unfortunately, no, not at the moment. We can get that to you. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor Goff, these are general questions still.
Yeah, just a question, because I'm trying to work out what the precise difference is between the amendment and the recommendation. Under the recommendation, you talk about 4 regional stakeholder events that will be held in the traditional style. Is the difference between what's being proposed there and what's in the amendment simply that it won't be before a formal Finance and Performance Committee?
I believe this amendment addresses having hearings for every person of Auckland to have the ability to come and have their 15 minutes in front of Finance and Performance.
Yes, sorry, I'm still not clear on this. The 4 regional stakeholder events will be an opportunity for a wide range of stakeholders to be determined by the governing body to come along and formally present submissions in a traditional style. So to what extent does that cater for what seems to be proposed in the amendment?
Sorry, my understanding of the amendment is that it opens the potential attendees to the general public and not just the stakeholders to be heard by the Finance and Performance Committee.
Individual ratepayers.
Individual ratepayers.
Okay.
Other than groups.
And at the moment, you're saying in the recommendations before us that there will be at least 25 events for Have Your Say where the public can do just that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I also just clarify that this, if there was a regional hearings, the people that would attend could only speak to regional issues unless each of the local boards had a delegation to governing body to hear local issues. So at a Have Your Say event, governing body give a delegation to each of the local boards to hear regional as well. So as a member of the public, you can speak to both local and regional, but that would not happen at a regional hearing.
Right, we're on to, just question, are there any general questions, or everyone's happy to move to the amendment?
Just a general question, Mr.
No,
Chair.
I had my hand up for general questions.
Okay, sorry, I thought you wanted a specific, sorry.
No.
Please go ahead, Councillor.
Just a question on what you've just said, which concerns me. Are you saying that with the Have Your Say events, is that local boards will be asking regional questions and because that's what I heard. So can you just clarify that particular statement you just made, please?
Sure. So at a locally held Have Your Say event, there are both governing body and local board members.
Yes.
So the people that attend can give both regional and local feedback. At a regional stakeholder event, because there's no local board
It's only on
members,
regional. No, that's right. I obviously wanted to get that clarification around that. Second question is, so with Marae, I mean, how would that be managed? Because I know with some of the hui that we've had with Mata Waka, Taurehere, is that the choice for the ones at Manukau were that they wanted to go to a general place, and in the particular occasions through the last long-term plan and annual plan, we ended up meeting at Manukau. Others said, yes, it would be awesome to go to Marae, and we arranged that, for example, at Manurewa. So the question is that option still going to be the case? Because I don't want anything to be put up
at the recommendations to say that no, they will be held at a marae. When we had Manukau as the preference for our wider Māori community, as in Mātā Waka, not mana whenua. I've got a question on mana whenua, but I just want that question answered.
So through the chair, we are working with groups like, in terms of the Mātā Waka, we are working with groups like Te Ora o Manukau to make sure that we have the appropriate approach that works for their communities.
Cool.
And if they say what you're suggesting, obviously, because it's worked in the past and I agree, then we'll move in that direction.
Okay, so I hope there's no changes of the recommendation we have around mana whenua and Mātā Waka where it has to be held in the marae, because with some of our Mātā Waka, they didn't want to, they wanted to meet there. But I'm glad Te Ora. So around mana whenua, haven't we also got mana whenua consultation with them separately to Mātā Waka?
That is correct. Through the chair, we have committed to ensuring that the Kaitiaki Forum and the mana whenua chairs have an opportunity to engage with the governing body directly in March, and then separately for mana whenua iwi to meet with the governing body with their own time.
And I think last week the two co-chairs came through, and I again wanted to confirm that. Kia ora.
Councillor Simpson and Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Look, I wasn't at the workshop. I had to be somewhere else. But my understanding, can you confirm for me that the local board chairs actually went for the option that you're suggesting when they had the discussion with the councillors? Is that correct?
This was not discussed. This paper was not discussed last week.
Right.
Just pull the microphone forward. Kylie, for you.
So we don't really know what the local boards think about how we should set it.
Well, local boards can choose how they want to run their locally held events. So if they feel that they would like to run some traditional style events, they have that opportunity.
But they would.
Right. Well, do you want to say? You ask it.
No, I think there's a speaking order, isn't there?
Councillor Cooper. Yep.
Yeah, I'm a bit perturbed about this because some of the report says that we've only got Mondays and Fridays available. Well, that isn't true anymore. We're usually working most days. And so if we're delegating the local boards, whichever kind of style they want to have, to hear regional issues, I'm very uncomfortable with that. They can hear them, but the reality is we have to vote on that, and we don't usually get kudos, but we usually get the blame if it goes wrong. And if we don't get to hear it and it's delegated to be heard by the local boards, to me it actually negates the whole point of having councillors there. And quite often you can't get there. And when you get there, there might be 3 people there. And I think that clustered regional events for everybody, where you could have local board and councillors sitting at them to hear everything, would be much, much better. I mean, I think, and I'm not saying to take away the ability for local boards to do what they want, but I think often the benefits of sort of agglomeration of people like to go to a big event. They like to have a sense of occasion, and for all the ones that I've been to, honestly, I mean, Councillor Simpson's community is usually a lot of them get out there, but most of these have your say events. You've got a very few people, and they're the same groups, and they're often groups. They're not individuals, they're local groups. And so I just find this a difficult thing to take, because often you can't get there. So the delegation doesn't sit comfortably with me, because local boards can't delegate back to us. We're not allowed to make any decisions on local issues. It seems a one-way traffic thing. And I think that when people are coming along, they want the councillors to hear about the rates, about the regional stuff. And you're saying, if we can get there, you know, all of this, it feels like we're trying to get out of our, you know, when it says you've got required to be at 3, as if we need to be pushed. But quite often, we've still got our full meetings, and I think something might be, we have to look at our timetabling around this time to make sure we are available, because we ridiculously got all our meetings still going, and then you have to leave a council meeting to go to your local area, you know, in the middle of the day, half the time, or in the afternoon, and I just think the whole thing doesn't work. I honestly think that there's a hybrid out of these two options. You know, if local boards want to have theirs, but I think having regional things where people can be heard is really important. And at the same time, I've heard people sit here quite often or tell me they feel very intimidated sitting here. Just a general member of the public. They're not used to public speaking. It's one of the biggest fears people have. And sitting here with a big bunch of people staring at them in this room, which is not hospitable anyway, we might be able to find some better sub-regional places where we can go where people feel more comfortable. You know, it might be a local town hall in the old town hall days that people feel really good about and want to come along, and it isn't, you know, they don't have to come and pay for parking. They don't have to try and struggle to get in here. I don't think that we should, I don't agree with this, because I think that has all those, it's fraught with all those issues. People trying to get from maybe to Hana or Franklin to get in here at a certain time of night. And if we've got a big group of people, there's hardly any seats with all our staff and everybody else. It's just not very hospitable, and people have to pay for parking. Or, you know, babysitters, whatever else it is. So I just think that, yes, I support having hearings for individuals. I think it's good for them. But to be quite honest, I think it's quite disheartening for some of them to come along to some of the local board have your say events. There might be one councillor if they can make it. There's not always all the local board people. Sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't. You know, and there's maybe 3 people in the gallery. And it's very unsatisfying, I'm sure, for people to be coming along to events like that and feel like it all, you know, it's sort of speaking into a bit of a, you know, people like to speak to a crowd if they're going to. So, and at least if it's a local crowd where they feel comfortable. So I can't support this because I don't think we should be getting general public having to come all the way in here. But I do think it would be good to have a, you know, a better way of having hearings for people.
Kenneth.
Through the Chair, thank you very much for the feedback. I think all the approaches that we considered have challenges, and the sub-regional approach, I think, definitely has its merits, but I also believe from an accessibility perspective, getting people from one local board to go to another local board area that could be within their geographic sub-regional, but quite a distance to travel, would be challenging. And we also found that people like to be around the communities that they can discuss local relevant issues. So that was part of the thinking in regards to why we've gone with this approach, having considered other approaches as well.
And I do remember the Deputy Mayor seems to get around to one heck of a lot of them. I take my hat off to you, Councillor Cashmore.
Speak when you have open speaking, Mr Chair, if that's all right.
Member Tapu.
Kia ora, Mr Chairman. Tēnā kōrua. So I'm quite very supportive of recommendations that are in the report. And just following on from Councillor Filippi's questions, I just need some clarification on the term joint committee meetings. It's in paragraph 30 on page 25, and it's about kanohi ki te kanohi, and you give a reference about through council governance, through the mayor, and joint committee meetings. Can you explain to me that term? Because it's foreign to me.
Yeah, so what we were referring to there is giving the opportunity for specific iwi to have their face time directly with council governance, i.e. the governing body.
I got that. It's the last bit, the joint committee meetings. What is it? Give me an example.
Because we are consulting with the Auckland Plan with the 10-year budget, where appropriate, the Finance and Performance Committee will have a joint workshop with the Planning Committee.
Oh, so it's workshops?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's a different term. Committee meetings are formal decision-making meetings. Workshops are workshops.
Right, so we're now on to the amendment. So
I had a general question, Mr Chair.
General question?
And really that's just around the context of this issue. Can you give us an idea of the overall budget for the long-term plan and the Auckland Plan refresh, and perhaps also an indication of the budget that we went through for the Auckland Plan last time?
So the combined budget for the 10-year plan, 10-year budget and the Auckland Plan refresh this time around is around 1.5 million. So that's the communications and engagement.
Just communications. I'm talking about the cost of preparing those things, which I understand is in the many millions.
Sorry, you're talking about the plan itself?
The long-term plan, the 10-year budget, and the Auckland Plan refresh. What's our overall budget envelope for those?
We would have to get back to you on that. So we only have the budget at the moment for the communication and engagement plan.
Okay, so I don't have an answer to that, Mr. Chair, but I would suggest it's in the many tens of millions, and I'm just asking that question so that we recognise that engaging around these things, asking questions around participation is very important. Otherwise, why would you do it?
Thank you. Right, we're on to the amendment. Councillor Sayers, would you like to introduce your amendment?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just listening to the questions in the debate, Mr. Chair, I just think perhaps I should add into that amendment that the Auckland Plan as well. So perhaps it should read, approve a public hearings process for the long-term plan and Auckland Plan. And I think my seconder would be happy with that, would you?
Yeah, that's
the seconder. Yeah, okay, thank you. This is really what I'm looking to do here, if I can just make it clear to all the councillors, is create is take option 1 and add the best parts of option 2 into that. So it's a bit of a hybrid of option 2 that I'm wanting to introduce. The recommendations obviously recommend option 1, but this is the ability for the public, not just stakeholders, but anyone in the public who wanted to make the effort to come and present to the governing body, that opportunity's there. They can take it or leave it. They can certainly engage in any of the other events that are being offered in option 1, Mr. Chair. But I think the ability for certain people, for certain issues, where they want to and talk to all of us collectively is vitally important for Aucklanders. And I'm a little bit worried about the trend that we are seeing over a number of years, where the ability for people to actually come in person and talk to us, the Mayor and the councillors collectively in one spot seems to be limited by the processes that we're taking. So I'm just, even if we're going to sub-regional, not all councillors can get to all those meetings. Here we're all together in one room and can hear the issues of certain ratepayers and residents of Auckland. I think that's absolutely vital. And look, I do commend on the great range of events that are being proposed there. You've talked about the Have Your Say events, the iwi, regional stakeholder, the surveys, the local board engagement. That's all important and very important this time around. I'm sure the Mayor would agree that we really want to get good engagement and some good feedback so we can make wise decisions. Without the ability for the public to come and talk to us as a group, if they wanted to and make that effort, I think we're just cutting Aucklanders short there. So really what I'm trying to introduce, Chair, is a hybrid. So just take it, a hybrid of option 2 that I'm proposing. And we just heard from the Treasury a little while ago how Aucklanders are on the hook. They are accountable at the end of the day for the debt of Auckland Council, now up to about $8 billion. We really need to cast our net as wide as possible to engage the thoughts of every resident and ratepayer across Auckland so we do make the right decision next year about the 10-year plan and the Auckland Plan. I just think by supporting this amendment, fellow councillors and Mr Mayor, it's a more inclusive, includes all the general public. It helps us to make more informed and better decisions. As was mentioned, we are the final decision makers on this, and I think we need to be able to open up that opportunity for the public to come and talk to us collectively. So hence that's introduction, Mr Chair, of why the amendment's there. Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. No, I think Councillor Sayers has made a number of very pertinent points there, not least of which goes to the issue of equity. The various stakeholders come in because they know that that's probably the best mode for having a captive audience and being able to get their submission across in as effective way as possible. So it doesn't seem fair to me where you would cut out individuals who'd want to do that and then allow other interest groups who for some reason have that advantage. I certainly know some of the most articulate and lucid presentations I've heard have been from members of the public. I can remember one gentleman out in Mangere Town Centre talking about the increase in rent for council pensioner housing, and if that gentleman had been able to speak to the collective group of the council, as opposed to just getting his couple of little minutes at a table, which admittedly suits some people, that would have been a very powerful presentation. So we should provide for that opportunity, and as Councillor Sayers said, if people are willing to go to the trouble to physically come in here in the first instance, to organise themselves, perhaps to provide some sort of written account of their submission, and field questions and go through the the relative discomfort of being in the public gaze, then why shouldn't they? So I think for all those reasons, Mr. Chair, that this is an amendment that's very worth supporting, and I think in terms of catering for that diversity, which due credit to our officers, they're going full out to capture everyone. Well, for a number of people, that's the way they want to present. They want to turn up here, they've got the confidence to do it, they've prepared themselves. More often than not, the people are pretty articulate, and if they want to have an impact, then allow them to do it, because that's only fair. We allow other people to do it, we should allow members of the public as well. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Question to the officers around the amendment, if I may. If the amendment is passed, you've said in the attachments that you would need X number of hours. Is that the same number of hours? How many, can we fit in practically what this amendment says? Have you got confidence that we can fit it in?
So at the moment, we've got advice from Democracy saying you've only got 6 working days available in the month of March that you're actually all available, which is Mondays and Fridays, because you've got committee meetings already. So currently that's the only days that you could run them during the weekdays.
Right.
But however, if this went through, you could run them on the weekends. But just to point out, you can only get through 25 people per day. And also they can only speak to regional issues.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just interested in whilst the theory is good, right? I think we need to be very careful. I just want to know what I'm buying in for if I support this amendment. For example, I can't guarantee, there's things that people do, No one said to me, you're proving this and you have to be available. I don't want to agree to something and then I can't do it and people say, oh, but you didn't turn up. This actually hasn't told me when I would need to turn up. Now, I'm happy to do the Mondays, Fridays. I'm happy to take the 6 of them, But I want to know what I'm buying into. And at the moment, I don't.
No, to a degree, how long is a piece of string? Because we really won't know how many people would come forward would want to, but we'd be quite questionably using all our Fridays, Monday and Fridays. We'd probably have to be doing some night sessions and weekend sessions as well. On past turnout, been getting a bit thin at times, so I wouldn't hold your breath that we're going to have a full house listening to them, but
members of the public
for
like
everyone's
us being
view.
available at night.
So I'm going to Councillor Cashmore, then Councillor Filipona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the last annual 10-year budget, I think I went to either 13 or 16 Have Your Say events. Some of the biggest attended ones were in Ōrākei, some of the least attended ones, Central City, and out my way. Waiuku, 3 people. Pukekohe the next night, 80 people. I think Ōrākei we had 200 one night and about the same the next. One of the ones that really impressed me the most was Ōrākei. Hall was full, the people were really engaged, and they sat around their table and listened to the discussion, and we just sit there and listen. But after the meeting, people coming up asking you detailed questions about regional policy, about budgets. Alfred probably recall, it was pretty hard to get out of the place, wasn't it? It was amazing. And that was the great part. I also remember the same thing happening up in Warkworth and Wellsford, and it was Humi or Huapa, I forget which one now, where the people actually were really interested in the detail about what we're doing as a region.
Exactly.
And the fact when you see the numbers here that have been partaking compared to the old-fashioned system come up and stand in front of the formal council, compared to the people who are running up now these have your say events, and informally having a discussion, getting themselves better informed, and everything they say is taken down in note form by the staff. And these are consultation points that we see in summary. So to me, it is a slightly less formal, yes, but is it more inclusive? Most definitely. Does it give people greater opportunity? Most definitely. The formal round the table for the regional stakeholders, last term, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were down to 4 councillors.
Yep.
It was embarrassing.
It was.
It was absolutely cringing. And there were people lining up to speak for the last 3 or 4 to 4 of us. Yep. And I wasn't proud of that. So I'd be very dubious about this formal system where we're better off to encourage people to come along to the Have Your Say events in our local areas. And yes, some of them, people are great orators and have a good go at them. And that's fantastic. But what I loved was the Mrs. Joe Smith or Mrs. Opire from Mangere wanting to talk to me about what the effect of a rate increase would have in her suburb. I remember I had a dossier this thick of every regional breakdown in every district for the council, what the average rates increases were. We had what the interim transport levy potentially was going to deliver for the area in each region. These were the sorts of things that people were interested in. And I remember the people in Onehunga hearing about the new bus interchanges and transport modes. They were thrilled. They were excited. So local's great. And it's working because the numbers we see there of participation are great in improving, doubling or quadrupling. So be careful what you want to wish for, councillors here. The system we've got in place now is performing.
Councillor Filippone.
Thank you, Chair. For those councillors that have, I think especially with legacy, and with, I'm only talking about the Manukau City Council, when we ended up going through the long-term plan, annual plan, we ended up, I think, deciding, and I stand corrected with the councillors that were on there, but we ended up deciding to go through as long as we had, and that took ages. Sometimes we ended up finishing about 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, hearing all the submissions. Now, I agree with the Deputy Mayor. The system we have now, and I can speak for the Pacific one, and I just asked Councillor Collins around the Pacific one we had, which was well attended, well run, and I think it was Wakatautua that ended up facilitating that, and that was awesome. We had regional issues, local board plans. So, you know, I can see us, and for others, but I can see us going through to, having to go through to about 9 o'clock if that is the period in March that we have. Look, I just want to, so one, I'm not supporting this, but I do, however, have a comment around the Have Your Say events across the region, and especially for those in our ward, is that we haven't got anything on when you book them in, please. Because during the annual plan, we had planning committee, or we just had meetings that I couldn't attend, and those are issues that both of us, and hopefully I can speak on both of us, that those are the issues we want to go to and listen, as well as regional. But we had the 2 local board ones, and I couldn't attend because we had committee of the whole. So can we at least arrange with the local board that at least both of us are free to attend the ones in our respective local boards? And I think I share the same sentiment for the councillors in their local board as well, is that they're free to attend, and then we get the itinerary out for the regional ones. So, Chair, that's, for me, I will not be supporting this because I know where it's going to go.
Okay, we've got speaking about the amendment, Councillor Darby, Councillor Newman and Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Chair. Look, just at the outset, I mean, I did notice at the beginning that it didn't include the Auckland plan, and we're consulting on both, and that's a late addition. But to you, Chair, and I'm sure you won't take this as an offence, you don't have jurisdiction over the Auckland plan. I'm sorry, but I do as Chair. And we're not going to muddle this up by having two hearings, let alone one. So there goes, the crux of this is a lack of understanding of the whole process. We want to engage with people more deeply, not exclusively. I've sat around the council before this, at the North Shore City Council, for days and weeks, and I know how shallow it has been, those hearings. They are the most misleading forums that I've ever participated in. And of course, today is a little bit different because we didn't have social media, 10 years ago. But I can assure you that sitting around that hearing, there won't be a lot of listening. There will be a lot of councillors checking on their popularity on social media. Stark truth, absolute stark truth. So, Mr. Chair, this is a deadening throwback approach. This is the approach that we discovered did not work, that did not engage with Aucklanders. It was a failure, and our community and engagement our communications and engagement policy discussed that. We all discussed that in 2016 when we confirmed that new policy, and we wanted to delve deeper. We wanted to have some of the things that got into a rich conversation with our constituents, like the focus groups, like the survey, and really tried to elicit those responses that we knew were there, but they weren't coming out. And so, Mr. Chair, I can't support this. This looks like good packaging, but you know what? There's nothing in the box.
Councillor Newman.
Chair, firstly, congratulations to Councillor Sayers on being able to have his amendment debated. Chair, choice and an egalitarian approach to democratic participation is not shallow, it is not misleading, it is not a failure, and it's not a deadening throwback to past approaches. I'm sorry, Councillor Darby, I take offence at some of the words that you used, but this is a process that we have a discussion, and I accept that there will be different points of view. Neither is this an either-or. This is about an option for those people who don't want to rely solely or exclusively or don't want to participate in the have your says where you go to a forum and there'll be a group of people there, wherever it may be, and they don't just want to rely on a survey if they're part of the chosen few who are the statistical cross-section of Auckland to give their quantitative feedback. It's about a choice for those people who want to make a submission and to come to a forum to speak to that submission. And the amendment doesn't necessarily presuppose that the hearings will be exclusively at the Auckland Town Hall. I would hope that if this amendment is adopted, that there could be some full hearings that take place at Manukau and somewhere on the shore and out west, and if there's opportunities to go elsewhere, then great as well. But there is an opportunity for those who wish to be heard, and it doesn't supplant have your say. It doesn't mean that, look, I don't believe for one moment that the total number of submissions is going to drop through the floor because we suddenly offer choice to people. That's not going to happen. I have to say I agreed with a lot of what Councillor Cooper said, actually. I have real concern about the delegation. I think that have your says where we're getting local boards to do the heavy lifting on the consultation as part of a consideration process whereby regional questions will be taken at a have your say. That's not good. That's not good engagement at all. So I'm looking for a hybrid too. I am happy to support the amendment and if there's a vote taken, obviously I'll vote for that. But if that is lost, Mr. Chair, I'm not comfortable with option 1 at this point, because it does make that delegation, and I'm not comfortable with that decision being taken at that level, Mr. Chair. And frankly, if I were the local board, I said this the other day in discussion with the local board members who were present, not all of them were. Don't presuppose that local boards are fully on board, because not even this report indicates that. But if I was a member of a local board facilitating a have your say, where regional questions were being taken at it, quite frankly, I would be questioning whether I would want to be fronting that and doing the heavy lifting. One, because they don't actually have delegation to make those regional decisions, and two, because they might strongly disagree with the tenor of some of the value propositions that are set out in the consultation, Mr. Chair. So I'm happy to support the amendment, and I don't have full comfort with the options that are set out in the paper.
Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I applaud the intent of this motion, but I'm going to have to vote against it on the basis of there seems to be we need an equalising factor here, and I've always supported Have Your Say events because I believe they provide the necessary conditions for people who might not normally participate in these events or in the ability to present to this table, who might have another fora with which they can do it. So I'm very supportive of that. I support the intent of this recommendation, except that on one hand you've got this recommendation almost says to me there's compulsion around the attendance of councillors or governing body members, whereas Have Your Say, there doesn't seem to be the same sense of compulsion. And I think if we could equalise it such that people felt like they were attending an event, they were submitting to an event where they would be genuinely heard, then I would be then I would support this motion going forward. But I don't, because I think it's imbalanced. So I'm going to stay with the idea of having the Have Your Say event. If this goes forward, I'm cool with that too. And listening to Councillor Newman, I agree with much of his sentiment. I think we've got to get the balance right, and I don't think we've got the balance right. And that's where I think the discrepancy lies, is that some people, if they were presenting to the Finance Committee, then that's a formal sitting of the Finance Committee, and then there's a sense of compulsion of people being there. And I don't want people in the public to think, okay, I'll go to Finance because that's official, whereas Have Your Say might not be considered official on the basis that it's a voluntary attendance of folk. If we get the balance right, then I would have supported this motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Mayor Goff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Clearly what sets democracy out from any other system is the principles of accountability and the readiness to listen. And both of those are absolutely essential. What we're trying to do with consultation is get to the greatest number of people first, but secondly, we want to get to a broad and representative cross-section of people. And I and everybody else around this table have sat in enough meetings to know that formal consultations are often about people that we actually have heard time and again coming back to a formal session, and then we try to say that we're about accountability, and at the end of a long day of hearing submissions that where we know the people and we've heard them before, there are 4 councillors left in the room, and that's happened, then the public take the opposite message from that anyway. Look, we did bring in a new system for a good reason. We wanted to increase the number of people attending, and we wanted to increase the number of people making submissions. And it seems to me that system has worked pretty damn well. Last year in the annual plan, we doubled the number of people who are attending meetings. We've heard before that we've quadrupled the number of submissions. But, you know, however conscientious we are about this, we are representing a constituency of 1.6 million people. And that means the ability to do things in a traditional way are more limited than they were before. We have a direct limitation on the time that staff can put in. They are paid, they're professional, but they're not paid to be there 80 hours a week. Some of us are there 80 hours a week, But we have a range of meetings anyway, and we've got to try to fit then a whole new set of meetings in with the ones that we've already got. You know, last week was a bit like that for me. I think I did something between 80 and 100 hours. That is at the absolute limit of what we as human beings can do, even though we're trying to do our jobs conscientiously. So, you know, I think for the 25 Have Your Say meetings to work, we've got to have a couple of councillors at each of them, because the issues that are coming up are regional issues, and we need to have councillors represented. And they can be for a couple of hours, or they can be longer. So what we're asking you to do at Have Your Say is, and we're requiring it actually under B in the recommendation, is that you've got to attend at least 3 of these, and that you'll also want to be probably going to the 4 regional meetings. So that's 7 meetings, and then maybe throw in a couple of the others. You can get up to 10 meetings that you'll have already. So if you do what is required in the main recommendation, you're already going to be pretty busy on top of all of the standard meetings that you have to do. But if you have an open-ended session, such as is being recommended in that amendment, you may be required to be there for many, many hours, not necessarily getting to a wider cross-section of people, but actually the people that have always done things in the traditional way that you have heard before and you've communicated before with. I think we have a system set out in the main recommendation where we will reach out. We'll have a quantitative survey that will tell us what 3,000 or 4,000 people who wouldn't come to meetings are thinking. So we're getting some feedback from them. And every Aucklander will have the ability to go to any number of Have Your Say meetings and to make written submissions. So I don't think we're cutting people short on their ability to have feedback. But we've done this in the past. We know what the results of doing it in the same way in the past. And the definition of madness is doing the same thing time and time again and expecting to get a different result. Well, we won't. We've got to reach out. We've got to go wider. We've got to use social media. We've got to look at a variety of ways in which we can hear what people have to tell us. But I'm not in favour of the amendment because I think we're going backwards and not forwards in terms of our consultation with people.
Right, last speaker before I put the amendment, which is Councillor Walker. Wait.
Sure. I won't put it as a question, Mr. Chair, but I'll just seek your generosity again, and that is really around the matter of engagement on the part of councillors. We've got this aspect of physical engagement, but I'd suggest in almost every instance people are putting in written submissions. The two go together. So often when the particular group or individual fronts up, there's some engagement. It's not just one way, it's two-way. And then hopefully we get a more informed written submission. So from my perspective, if councillors have the time to read the submissions, and obviously the summary of those submissions, then they're pretty well informed. We don't need to go to everything, but the important thing is that we give people in the community the opportunity to participate. There may be meetings around engagement that they want to organise, independent of us, and we should be facilitating that process. So there should be as many meetings as possible across the community if we've got grassroots engagement. And we as councillors may select to go to this or that or the other. This is a process that's owned by the community, not by us.
If this was approved, I just point out it wouldn't be a matter of, one would intend that you wouldn't be just selecting the meetings you'd be going to. You'd be going to all the meetings, especially those who voted for it. So quite clear. Councillor Sayers to close the debate.
Okay. Can I speak?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Simpson. I've got
thank you,
a couple of people popped in ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Simpson, Councillor Lee, and then Councillor Sayers.
As a councillor representing the ward that potentially has one of the highest level of submitters and participants in this process, I suppose I want to say one of the reasons I believe that is to be the case is that we do have more than the minimum number locally. It is easy for people to turn up locally and have their say. The great relationship between the local board and the councillor means that some are more formal, and Bill, you've seen this, Councillor Cashmore, you've seen a more formal situation where people have stood up and said their thing, and sometimes it's a more casual. So I think that at the end of the day, we need to look at ourselves and our constituents and say to ourselves, will this help our, the constituents of Auckland add value to what they can actually do? I'm responsible for the people who put me in this job, and I have spoken to all my local residents associations. We've never just had one Have Your Say event. We've always had multiple events that have different flavours to suit different people. I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. Chairman. I'm not. My attendance record and everything that is inside me means that if I'm supposed to do something, I will turn up and do it. That's what I have been elected to do. And potentially not voting for this amendment, that's not because I'm not afraid to do the hard yards. What I am saying, though, is I will give everybody in my ward every opportunity to have their say on the issues that I need to represent them and vote on. So to that end, I know that every Residents Association chair has spoken to me about the emphasis of having it local. So I will be supporting my community in their view to have these local. They do not feel there is a need for that. So my vote will be against this amendment because that is what my community have said that they believe is not necessary, and they want to have all their say locally. Thank you.
So Councillor Sayers has been reminding me you don't get a right to reply for an amendment, so I'm going to take you to just make a general comment, and then we're going to finish with Councillor Lee.
Look, thank you, Mr. Chairman,
we'll go with Councillor
for
Sayers
your
first.
generosity,
Sorry?
which is really on display because I have spoke at the wrong time.
It's all right. Keep going. Keep going.
I'll be very brief. Can I say, Mr. Chairman, that this amendment needs to be decided on its merits and fairly. Unlike as some members have suggested, this does not compel people to come to a formal hearing. It just offers them the opportunity to, if they wish to. Now, we know from last year that a number of people wanted to present at a formal hearing and were not allowed. And so this is in the interest of the council itself over this very important process. A formal hearing is a long-established aspect of our democratic local government. And now it's been taken away except for a chosen few. What the council deems to be key stakeholders. In other words, some Aucklanders are more important than others when it comes to these things, according to the council. Now, I think that is not a good look. The council needs to consider the optics of this in terms of disallowing people to come to a formal hearing if they want to. All this amendment does is to change that, to enable people to come to a hearing, to provide more choice. And I think if we can provide more choice and more flexibility and be seen to be open and inclusive, especially when it comes to an $80 billion long-term plan, that's to the benefit of the council and to the people of Auckland. So I strongly urge members to support this in the interests of the image of the council, at least.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Right, last speaker, Councillor Sayers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Certainly this isn't trying to take away any of the processes of engagement that we have in place. It's really about not having the people of Auckland robbed of their opportunity to talk to us, the people around this table, formally, as Councillor Lee correctly has outlined. Remember, they'll be talking about regional issues, not local issues. They want to talk to us. At the heart of this is about the Aucklanders' trust and confidence in us as a governing body. And we know how low that is. To say things are working correctly is wrong. We need to be doing something differently to change the attitudes of our communities who are feeling extremely isolated in many cases. It's not about removing anything that is working, and I congratulate the officers on coming up with a plan. It's about adding to it. It's about allowing participation for Aucklanders with us, you, as the governing body.
In the way they feel most comfortable.
It's about allowing democracy for Aucklanders to us as the governing body. Now, in the great words of Abraham Lincoln, he said democracy in government was of the people, by the people, for the people. So why not allow the people to come and talk to us in a formal manner, eyeball us, and see the heart and soul of this council? I would urge you that it would be a mistake not to vote this amendment through. This is about the democratic rights of Aucklanders to come and talk to their governing body face to face. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, I'm going to put
By division?
resolution by division.
Councillor Clow.
No.
By division.
Councillor Cashmore.
No.
Councillor Collins.
Against.
Councillor Cooper.
Against.
Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Filipaina.
Against.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Mayor Goff.
Against.
Councillor Hills.
No, thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Newman.
For.
Councillor Quacks.
For.
Councillor Sayers.
For.
Councillor Simpson.
Oh, glory.
Was that a yes?
Four. Yeah.
Councillor Stewart.
Just said you weren't going to vote.
Member Taipari.
Against.
Councillor Sir John Walker.
For.
Councillor Wayne Walker.
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
Four.
10 to 9.
Oh, hit the button, I can't see.
Carried 10 to 9.
Yep. So that amendment has been 10 to 9, so lots of meetings coming up.
Yep. Victory for the people.
So we now have another amendment. So, you know, wait, there's more. Right, we have another amendment, and we have a seconder to your amendment, Councillor Walker?
Mr. Collins, sir.
Mr. Collins, okay, right.
Community-specific engagement.
Right, do you want to have a little chat about this one, or?
I'm happy to
Take
speak
the
to it
vote.
very briefly, Mr. Chair.
Very briefly, good.
And really, it's just to give the officers more latitude along the lines that I discussed, and to also open up the possibility of community-specific events being broader than just demographic. So that, for example, might include an event for the business community. It could include an event for the environment community, arts and the like. I'm making the assumption that all of this is going to be covered off inside the budget envelope. So it's really just giving some latitude. I don't think we can second guess things at this stage. It may well be that various cluster groups come forward and say to the officers, we'd really like to run something. It's not going to cost much money. It's going to be pretty efficient. Can you help to facilitate that? So that's where I'm coming from, Mr. Chair, and it's in line with, I think, the earlier comments of Mayor Goff around being a broad and representative cross-section, and the comments of Councillor Darby around engaging more deeply. So it's just an adjustment in the words rather than anything particularly new.
Okay, anyone else want to speak for or against the amendment?
Happy to back
it. Okay, so we've got a movement, so a
Just
seconder.
one question.
Yep.
So in relation to this particular one, in question to officers, staff, so it removes 4 to 6 community specific. It just removes the number. So if we end up with 2, so be it. That's what I'm asking. If it's 2, well then so be it. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Yep. But you could end up with 15,
Oh, I'd look at, and this is why I say.
It'll be
if
pretty
it's
busy
less,
in March.
more,
But the officers,
Let's-
they'll
let's-
manage that.
Work it through.
let's
Right.
add it to the last one.
Okay, by division or what? Anyone want this one by division or? Maybe. Okay, we've got another amendment.
So just to be clear, Mr. Chair, essentially it's substituting the wording in bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just changing the wording there. That's all. It's nothing
So
particularly
you're
new.
substituting that, are you? Okay.
That is
right.
correct.
Quite clear, but we'll
I thought you couldn't have a,
we'll deal with that. Right. Well, we'll put this amendment. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Well, it's carried. There you are. That will now
Thank you
be
for your
substitute.
generosity, Mr. Chair.
So that's right. And then we're just going to
Substantive?
just take a little bit of time while we just get that substituted in the original motion.
Oh my gosh.
So, I don't know about Mayor Goff, who was seconding. I'm withdrawing. I'm not going to move the recommendations, so we need to find a new
Mr.
mover.
Chairman, I'm happy to move them.
And Councillor Fletcher will move. Do you want to?
I'll second it.
Still second? Okay.
so, just understanding.
Okay, so we're just waiting for him to get up. Councillor Hills, yep.
I just want to speak to the, so we've got option 1 with the added, or is it option 2 with the?
The option 1 with the added bit.
Yeah, so my thoughts are just, you know, this is great, we'll add a whole lot of hours, but this will preclude us from getting out into our communities more. Every person that has come and presented to this body in the last year that has talked to me has said this is the most, you know, uncomfortable space to come sit and talk to. We should be getting out into our communities more. When officers present evidence to us, I'm not sure why we keep ignoring it, but, you know, double the long-term plan last time, submissions, and the ways to give feedback. The annual plan, we quadrupled the number of submissions and people speaking to give feedback. And there's other channels as well. I am now concerned that we're going to sit in this room and listen to a sector of the group who come in here because we're all compelled to have to sit here. We were going to increase staff costs. We're going to increase the number of hours that staff have to be here, which will also mean the time in lieu they have to use, the annual leave they pick up, all those other things. The comms and engagement budget, I'm sure, will shoot right up after that decision because now we're going to have to advertise all those hearings. We're going to have to bring different ways and different things back in through that. It will take the people, the comms and engagement staff that were supposed to be in our communities back into this space. And also, as a previous local board member, I think I said this last time, even presenting as a local board, we used to come in here and it used to be very depressing when it would only be half of the council available or sitting here at the end of the day. Even the last 2 times the local boards have come in here and we've spent a day in here, and I've actually asked if we can split them over 2 mornings instead of full days, because it is hard for councillors to have the whole day here, but that is probably my point. By the end, the last couple of boards are often talking to just a few of us, and because we're all busy, but that's the whole point. I'm not sure how we're now suddenly going to be here all the days. I mean, I'm in here 5 days a week mostly and have stuff on, and then I get back out to the community at nights and weekends. Now we're going to fill up the nights and weekends with hearings. So this is great. I think the Have Your Say is the whole point of the government change, the legislation, to make it more, 21st century, moving with the times, having people out in their communities. We used to have caravans that used to go out onto the park on Kaipatiki Local Board and talk to people in a much different way. This is not, very organised people can come in here and submit, and that's great. But we're going to give them different weight because all of us have to be here and all of us are listening to the subsection of the community that are here. So it's going to give different weight to the speeches and the presentations of people who in our communities often don't have a voice and often aren't able to present in the same way or get into this place. So I want to make sure that when we do this, we think about going to as many Have Your Says, if we can get to them, because we'll probably be stuck here, to listen to the people in our community that don't or can't or won't come into this place. I think we've made a big problem for ourselves here by doing that. And the cost and the staff time and the stress and the pressure put on our staff. Yeah, it's great, we can have hearings, but we're a city of almost 1.7 million, heading to 1.7 million. If we get 600 people, that's 10,000 minutes of speaking time that we have to figure out to fit in, and then we're going to upset people when they're not heard. I would rather be out in our communities talking to people in a million different ways than stuck in this room every day. So, great, this is an exciting opportunity, but we're going to hear a one-way discussion. We're not going to be able to build that discussion that we could with Aucklanders out in our communities, because we're from all over the city. So, yeah, I'm disappointed that we've gone back to a system that was changed so we could include more people and make sure everyone was getting a fair say across our communities. But yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, question, if that's okay, and then comment. Reserve my right to comment. Question around A. And that's received verbal feedback, because, interesting enough, I agree with Councillor Newman in regards to the verbal, the word verbal. So question is written also still there, the option?
Yes.
Yep, written.
As well as digital.
Right, so therefore then can we change verbal, and I mean that's up to the mover and the seconder to receive all feedback, because verbal to me gave me the same impression. I thought it was just, I thought surely they'd be taking notes, and they will be. I think it's just all. Yep. So then it's just all feedback, whether it be
I'll
written.
support Councillor Philippine.
Oh no, look at I've just asked the chair and deputy chair to sort of do that. Yeah, if it's okay with them. So we put in all. Second question is in regards to B, and again it's for the mover and the seconder for B. Is to put in, include there, require councillors to attend a minimum of 3 Have Your Say events and to attend all four regional stakeholder events. I just think if it's with the mover and the seconder, if we end up putting that in, that at least gives an indication to those that voted the First Amendment that you have to attend the 4 regional. So I don't know, I can move an amendment, but
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can give some assistance as the mover. I think that is perfectly reasonable. However, one needs to think about the practical application of this. On the event that someone awakens on the morning and they have diarrhea or some other unpleasant condition, I mean, let's just be realistic that it is desirable that they attend.
It's verbal, by the way.
and with all due respect
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to assist. I'm trying to assist, and I wouldn't want Councillor Philippine to feel that he has to move an amendment. I think the spirit of what he is proposing is excellent, and I support, but I just would ask, perhaps officers can give some advice just on the practical application of this, because people's circumstances change on a daily basis, as we know. So the spirit is there. How can we ensure that this is going to be delivered in a sensible way? So I don't know whether officers want to comment on that, but the same requirement would be, I'm sure, in terms of 3, but I think it's 3 out of other heavy says is quite deliverable. But if you actually make it explicit that they must attend the 4, then that could be complicated.
Well, to be quite interested, if we were to change that to include the 4, then it would be a logical extension that we make it compulsory that all councillors turn up to the public hearings process we've just initiated. So I'm happy to entertain that we would have a minimum of 3 and compulsory to come to all 4 regional stakeholder events plus the public hearings.
So,
Mr. Chair.
Well, hold on, I'm still there. So, Chair, look, and the reason I say that is because I understand if people are sick or anything else, there's no issue with that because it'll be noted anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's important in regards to now the workload that Councillor Hills has said, is that it's important that the council laws now attend the 4
Plus the other
Again, or plus any others that may come out. And I mean, look, that's democracy. And again, Chair, just to finish off, so if that's the case and it's okay with the move and seconder is to include that, that'll be great. With that proviso.
So we're quite clear, Councillor Filipino, so that would be the 4 regional stakeholder events plus all the public hearings.
Well, and I think for me it's just...
So we're just trying to find a seconder.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
I'm comfortable with that on the basis that the normal protocols that surround, so where people may have a bereavement, they may have an illness or something of those circumstances, or it may be other urgent council business, as long as those protocols are in place, I think that's perfectly reasonable.
And I totally agree with Councillor Fletcher. And then my last comment in regards to the substantive that's there, again, waiting the approval of the seconder, is Chair, I again agree with Councillor Hills in regards to the cost that may well be associated to this. And I look forward to the costs coming through as well, because it's interesting that people that have voted for the first one are the ones that are always saying that 2% is the big key for them, and we've got to reduce cost. So look, I look forward to something coming through around the additional communications cost that may end up coming out of this. So, Chair, through with your approval and our staff, that'll be good to get it back.
Attachment C does have estimated costs.
I got the estimated, but as a result of the new the amendments, it'll guarantee will increase. So I just want to get those. Thank you.
Because how much is it per hour we're here? Well, there's $10,000 an hour, anyway.
Because we only get paid when we turn up here, don't we?
Oh, I know, but it's going to cost us that. But anyway, so we're now making that amendment, and we've just got the second back in. The move indicated.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Happy? Are you happy?
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
No, I've got Councillor Cooper, Watson and Walker.
This just goes to the wording. Is there a reason that we've left the mayor out? So is it councillors and the mayor? Is that implicit?
I would regard it as
governing
implicit,
body
yes.
members.
In which case, I think we should acknowledge the mayor and bolt him on, sir.
Under the protocols that we've already agreed.
Okay, Councillor Cooper.
I guess that the mayor's part of the governing body, so it's just easy to say governing body. I can't support C. What really concerns me is we can't even be scheduled to be at our own local Have Your Say events because of all the continuing meetings we have to have in here. How on earth are we going to be able to attend our Have Your Say events if we're stuck in here all day? And I do remember in my Takuri days, we would start in the morning and then we would have lunch, then we would have dinner, and we'd still be listening to people well into the evening. And you did make that... What is the point of order?
The point of order is repetition, and the chairman can refer to that. We've already debated this issue. It's simply being included in the larger vote now. Do you want me to?
Well,
I mean, why don't we have a point of order for?
To be honest, a bit rich coming from you, Councillor Walker.
Exactly.
No, when we're talking.
I'll defer to your generosity, Mr. Chair.
Repetition, so Councillor Cooper, please keep
I wonder if
going.
there's a point of order for bullying. This is a repeat of last week.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. If that's reference to me, I would like an apology.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't actually.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to apologise because I didn't say anything wrong.
If you're going to make references, you should declare them.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Can you please ask to let me have my turn?
Yes, please
Thank you.
Continue, Councillor Cooper.
What I wanted to say is that my concern is over and over as locally elected governing body members, we get asked, we never see you now, we'd like to see you out in the area, I mean we see in the evenings, but when we have these events, people expect us to be there, and it's very difficult when we're stuck in here all the time, and that's my concern. If we're kept from the Have Your Says, because I cannot see how we can have, how many is it? Something like 35 Have Your Say events, 30-odd Have Your Say events, and have these hearings and the stakeholder meetings. We're going to be pulled betwixt and between. There'll be half of us in other places, half of us here. and we don't do anything justice. And I think we want to be able to do this justice because it is really important for people to be heard. So if they have made the effort to either come in here for the stakeholders group or go to the local Have Your Say events, I want to be available for all of it. And so I think this will stop us having that ability. That's my biggest concern, and that's why I ask Mr. Chairman if you would separate A and B and put C separately, because I do support A and B. Thank you.
Right. I'm happy to do that.
I have a question.
Councillor Watson.
Yes, I don't want to prolong this grim prognosis of the consultation. I'm starting to get really depressed. I would just simply make the suggestion, Mr. Chair, that might go some way to alleviating the dire concerns with C. In the legacy councils, quite often there are only 12, 10 members of the councils. I don't think it's necessary for all 20 people to turn up. You could roster 6 people on. You could come to some measure of accommodation that might allow people to make their contribution to the public hearings without the Stalinist compulsion that seems to be characterising everything else here. So there's a way around that. You could have 6, 7 people rostered on to come in for 3-1s, and that might go towards removing the concerns of the horrendous cost and workload and everything else.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
Mr. Chair, I understood standing orders required that when a procedural motion, the motion be put, then the motion is then put. I moved a procedural motion. You acknowledged that, and then you allowed Councillor Watson to speak. Now, I'm interested in what Councillor Watson has to say, but I moved a procedural motion.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm not sure.
I moved that the motion be put.
Okay,
because this is going round and round and round.
I did not hear you say that.
Okay, well, I move that the motion be put.
Can I speak?
Point of order, Mr.
So
Chair.
you have a
Point of order.
Procedural motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Seconder to that, no.
Point of order. Councillor Newman has put a procedural motion that takes precedence over others, so that motion has to be voted on.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
just asking, is there a seconder?
Yes, good question.
Is there a seconder?
I'll put second. I'll second it.
Councillor Quack's second.
Now it's a motion.
Right.
Now it's a motion. Put it.
I have a question.
Going round and round and round.
Are questions preceded
No,
by
it's procedural motion.
That means
Going to put the procedural motion. Do people
It's a
want
procedural
the
motion.
motion put?
We all read our standing orders?
All those in
vote
favour?
against
Right.
the procedural motion.
So you can vote again.
Right. So we're going to
That's
go A
democracy
and B,
works
but
that.
I have heard
Sorry,
that
Mr.
request.
Chairman, I
You've got to
didn't
put
hear you put the
procedural
vote, put the motion so we could actually vote.
Yeah.
It's a procedural
So I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
No.
Show of hands.
It's lost. Okay.
They get a chance to
So we're now back to the speaking order, and we've got Councillor Wayne Walker, who will not be repetitive.
I did not want to speak, sir.
Oh, well, there you go. It works well. Councillor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I voted for the amendment in C to be put up as an extra to option 1. But I'm not comfortable if everyone isn't going to buy into the fact that that's going to happen. Because you can't have half the people turning up. So if we're doing this, we have to agree to all do it together, or we don't do it. Because it's hardly fair to the public to be told that they come before the Finance and Performance Committee, which has 21 members, and then to turn around and say that only 6 will be there. You might as well take those 6 and have 6 or 7 locally. So I just want to be really clear that I'm happy for the hearings process. I'm happy to put my hand up for the time. I'm happy to do the time and the work. But I'm not going to do it on my own, and I think it's either everybody around this table has to agree to do it, or we don't do it. And I think that's important. This is about telling Auckland we are willing to listen, not just you have an opportunity to have your say. Now, I think that's a key point. So we either buy into this, it gets diaried, and we attend, and I appreciate, Councillor Fetcher, that you might have a bug or something, but at the end of the day, it's, for me, it's all or it's back to local. That's the purpose for me to say for C. So I need that real clarification around my colleagues.
Okay, so the clarification is going to be that I'm going to put A separately, B separately, and C separately. So those who vote against B, it will be interesting.
Well, we'll have it by division.
Well, hold on. Can you add to B, C? The bit of
Point of order. Coming back to standing orders, in terms of C, if it was then, I'm just trying to understand where we get into a direct negative situation. Could officers just ensure that we are being procedurally correct in the way that we're going to take the vote on this, because it's quite important.
Should we do? So then basically what you're saying is we should maybe make C B and B C, is it?
She just doesn't want it to be voted down.
Please.
I've taken offence at the
No, that's
head.
what...
No, that was not.
You said direct negative, so that's what
Well, it's almost time for a break. We're actually going to have a 5-minute break right now. We're having a break now for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Break for lobbying.
Next or legs?
Can we afford it?
No, but